Hello crafters and welcome back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. My name is Deepa from Designs by D, and today I have two quick and easy cards to share with you. This technique is really easy and foolproof, and it's just got a really nice artistic soft look to it in the end. So we're not going to be using too many products. The main thing we're going to be using is the All You Need Is Love stamp set. We've got the sentiments and that main floral bit there, which works great together. And then you're also going to need some type of color. So I've got watercolor brush markers here. You could use watercolors on their own. You could use inks. You could use anything you like that mixes with water that's going to create a nice soft background. So I've got my Misty here. I normally use my Altenew stamp wheel, but since these cardstocks are watercolor cardstock, they have texture to them. We're going to be adding a lot of water. I don't want it to get stuck to that sticky mat that's on the Altenew stamp wheel, so the Misty is going to come in handy today. I'm taking my stamp and I'm positioning it in the center of this 4¼ by 5½ inch piece of cardstock. Again, watercolor cold press cardstock. You could use cold press or hot press. It really depends on what look you want in the end. I think the cold press is good because it really absorbs a lot of the water, and I like that textured look it has. Now, all I'm doing is taking the colors that I chose. You could choose whichever colors you like. I've chosen to go with some fuchsia and purple for the flowers. And then I've got some nice greens for the leaves. And then I've got a bit of a bluish color, like a slate blue for the letters. And all I'm doing is coloring my stamp. Now, the first time you do this, it's probably going to be a little bit hard, especially if your stamp is new. But after you've stamped it once and the color's kind of taken on the stamp, it's easier to see kind of where the floral bits and the leafy bits are. So I added water, that's all that was in that bottle, water to the stamp and to the cardstock. So this rendition of this technique is going to have a lot more water, okay? We want the ink or the watercolor here to really diffuse into that cardstock and spread. We want it to have a really soft look, and in order to do this you need a bit more water. So I did stamp it out one time. I dried it with my heat tool, the cardstock, and now I'm going and adding some more. You'll see there's areas where I kind of missed some color, so I'll go back and add those in. And again, I added a spritz of water and stamped this down. Now you can see the water is starting to pool, the ink's starting to pool there. Do not worry, it looks really messy, but in the end, we're going to stamp over top, and all of that leaking ink, all of that leaking watercolor is just going to fill in all the open spaces and really color in your image. Now, if you added a bit too much water like I have, you can always take a paper towel and kind of soak up some of it and then dry it completely. So I just showed you what it looked like in the end there. We'll set that aside and we'll grab our second watercolor cardstock panel. Again, this is the same size, 4¼ by 5½ inches, so an A2 size card panel. And again, I'm coloring in my stamp in the same way that I did it the first time. The only difference with this time is we're going to add less water. We want to get a bit more sharper image. We want to see how this looks with less water, less flooding, okay? So I'm adding all of the markers just as I did the first time, and this time I'm only adding water to the stamp, not to the cardstock. So this is allowing the ink to kind of spread on the stamp, and then I stamp it down on the dry cardstock, dry watercolor cardstock. So you can see there's a little bit of flooding in the middle, but it's definitely not like the last card. I'll do this a second time, again, only adding water to the stamp. And every time that I stamp this down, I am drying the panel so that the ink before is all completely dry. So these are the two versions. You can see one has a more neater outline and the other one is a lot more flooded and the color is softer. So all I'm going to do now, keep in mind both these panels are completely dry. I've dried it with my heat tool. You could leave it overnight and do what you'd like. I'm now going to stamp this out using some black VersaFine Clair ink. And do keep in mind, I did not move my stamp from my Misty at all. And where I placed my cardstock in the Misty was strategically placed, I think 2 of those little squares inwards from the left side there. So that would be 3/4 of an inch. Now I've added some clear embossing powder and heated that up here to give it a nice shiny look. And then for the second panel, this time I'm going to heat emboss, but I'm going to heat emboss using gold embossing powder. And let's have a look at what this looks like in the end. Now remember, we didn't add as much water here, so the color didn't flood and disperse as much. So you can see in the end, I kind of covered up a lot of the color with the heat embossing. So don't worry about that. We can always fix that. Just go ahead and dry up your heat embossing. Make sure your panel's dry. And then what we'll do is we'll move on to our sentiments, and we'll come back to that panel after. So I've got two of the sub sentiments that kind of go with the love in that gorgeous floral image. And I'm going to stamp both of these out. One of them, I'm going to stamp them out with the black VersaFine Clair. That'll go with the panel that was stamped in black VersaFine Clair. And I'll stamp that a couple times. You can see that this creates like a nice little banner here. And I will cut these out so that we don't get any of the outside white around that rectangle showing. I'll just remove the lots of piece here since I'm done stamping it. And for the first stamp that we put down here, the longer one, I'm going to heat emboss that, and I'll heat emboss that in the gold. Again, that will go with the panel that was heat embossed with gold. So they match. It's all going to be tied together nicely. Now, I normally do not like to heat emboss these types of sentiments, but because these are a little bit larger, it comes out really nicely. The stamp is really crisp and like it gives a crisp image. And as I said, because it's a little bit larger, when they're smaller, it's kind of harder to get that with heat embossing. But this turned out really nice. So I'm cutting down my panel here. And as I cut it down, you'll notice I'll cut one side then the other because I want that love in the image to be really centered in the panel. And I actually cut like a 1/4 inch off each edge. Now I'm adding some black cardstock to my card base. It's a white card base, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Then I'm adding some like purple, like lilac metallic mirror cardstock, which is from that Tim Holtz Jewel Tones mirror cardstock craft pad there. And then I'll add my panel. Now I went ahead and cut down the sentiment. And you can see you get a nice black strip there with the sentiment in white. I'm just attaching it with a bit of foam adhesive. And now I've got these gorgeous Twinkle Illusion gems that I'm going to add. They have like a nice purpley pinkish tone to it, which goes really nice with this. Now you'll see that the background is very, very subtle. The colors like kind of all over the place. It's got a nice artistic look to it. So that's why this technique is really easy to do. It'd be perfect for mass production because you're basically flooding your panel with all of the color so you don't actually have to color it in yourself. And then it's just a matter of stamping everything out and attaching the sentiment. So going back to the other panel now with the gold embossing, I'm just going to do some watercoloring on it. I've got a water brush here and I've got the markers that I originally used. I'm just placing them down on a palette here and I'm just going to simply watercolor. Very simple. I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just adding the color to the areas that are blank now. So this technique is definitely what I've learned here, because I've experimented with adding more water or less water, is that this technique really needs the excess water. So the next time I do it, I would recommend spray the stamp, spray the panel even more, dry in between, and that's going to give you the best results. If you want a watercolor like this, you might as well do this from the beginning and just stamp out and heat emboss the stamp and then watercolor after. So it's completely up to you how you want to do that, but we definitely learned something in this video here. The more water, the better, especially for this technique. And it makes it much easier. This way you don't have to color in each image separately with the watercolors. So, as I've mentioned before in all the other videos, everything that's used is linked in the description below. So don't be afraid to kind of go there and check for everything. We have tons of links to the Crafty Meraki store. And if there's anything that I've used that is not there from that store, it's also linked as well. Bindu is very good that way, and she allows us to make sure that you guys know exactly where we got everything from so that you could basically complete the same card if you wanted to. So now we're going to go ahead and attach this to the panel. You can see I've matted it onto some gold glitter cardstock, which kind of just makes it stand out a little more. And again, it ties in with the gold embossing. I'm going to attach the sentiment, which I again cut down, and I'll do this with some foam adhesive. And then all that's left is to jazz this up with a few embellishments. Now on this one, I'm choosing to use just some gold gems here. This came out with the last release. And you could use whatever you'd like. If you want, you could use some stickles. I really like the gems because they just add a nice shiny effect. And again, it ties all that gold in that we've used. So I really hope that you guys will use this technique. And oh, forgot to mention, I've got the Bling Buddy there, which is actually one of my favorite products from the store. I love how it has like that rainbow sheen to it and the black bit to attach the embellishments. So these are the two cards that we created. This one was more soft and had a more subtle look, and this one is a little bit more vibrant because we did end up just watercoloring it in the end. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please do give this technique a try. It's really simple and easy to do and gives great artistic effects. And as I mentioned before, everything's linked in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time. Have a great weekend. Bye.